I was just talking to somebody who was telling me that there are no deals out there today. If you want to find cash flow, it's impossible. The price points are too high, interest rates are too high, yet every single week, members of my First Vacation Rental Investment Blueprint program are finding deals just like the one I'm about to walk you through right now. This is a live deal that's on the market. It's going to bring them, once they're finished setting it all up and getting it listed as a short-term rental, it's going to bring them just under $3,000 every single month going forward on a property that's really, really inexpensive. I work with people personally like Bob and Peggy who found the deal that I'm going to share with you today using my system. And if you're interested in working together to invest in a deal similar to this of your own, you can set up a call with me at livingoffrentals.com/call. All right, so let's dive into this deal, and I'm going to explain why this is such a high cash flowing property. And then if you stick around to the end, I'm going to explain 3 different ways that you can really de-risk your short-term rental investment. So you can see this property is listed for sale right now. It's active on the MLS. It'll probably be under contract by the time this video is released because, like I said, one of our members is working on this property right now, but it's listed for $119,900, and it's in Two Rivers, Wisconsin, which is a town I had never heard of until they sent me this property to analyze. So I was going through it for the first time with my analysis, and I'll share with you my process for analyzing this deal. So this is a 2-unit property, and when you look at these pictures, it is nothing to write home about. Like, this is not a property that would probably stand out to most people as being an ideal short-term rental, but I'm going to explain why it has so much potential. So this is a 2-unit property, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath on top, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath on bottom. And out of a 2-unit property, you're going to get a listing for each unit, but then you can also do a super listing of the entire building together, which is a huge benefit. So from a process standpoint, first I look at the listing. The next thing I do is I go to a map and I put in the address of the property and I zoom out to see where this is in conjunction with other cities. And one thing I highly recommend that works really well for this strategy is to buy in an area just outside of a larger city. So don't buy downtown in the larger city because that's where the price points are the highest, the regulations the strongest, there's a ton of red tape. But if you buy just outside, you typically get a great deal. You still have access to a large population center, so there's a lot of people traveling there. There's things to do there. You get benefits from that. And then also pick an area that has some local draws. So this checks the box of being just outside of Green Bay, which is a larger city. They've got the Packers there. They've got draws that a city would have. There's also Appleton, Wisconsin here. There's Lake Winnebago. There's Sheboygan and Manitowoc. These are all within driving distance with highways to all of them. And then from a local draws standpoint, if you look at the property itself, it's just a couple blocks from the beach. So this is Lake Michigan, a massive lake, and this is walking distance to the beach. And there's also this park right nearby. There's also going to be utilitarian reasons that people travel to this town for weddings, funerals, work, all that stuff. Then from a specific location, I then look at the street view. And it's almost like you're walking down the street by looking at the street view. And, you know, if you're investing from across the country, this allows you to get an idea of what this location is like. And so I'm looking for red flags in an area and looking how people maintain their properties or what type of neighborhood this might be. You can see this property is just freshly rehabbed. You can see all these houses are really well maintained. It looks like just a solid blue collar type of neighborhood that's really well maintained. So this would be like an ideal place for an affordable short-term rental. The next thing I do is I go to Airdna, and Airdna is just a huge data website that tells you about all the short-term rentals in an area. You used to be able to put in any town for free and it would tell you the averages for the area. They just changed that recently to where they only share, for the free version, they only share huge swaths of data, which is pretty much unusable. If you want access to the submarkets, which is the usable data, which Two Rivers would be considered a submarket, you're gonna have to pay the $15 a month for the basic version. So I think it's well worth it to do that. That's what I've done. The occupancy rate in Two Rivers is 50%. The average daily rate's $246. And so that's the average of these things across 74 active listings in that area. And it also tells you what sites these listings are located on. You know, it tells you in terms of occupancy, like what the occupancy is by month in the area. So there's a ton of really usable data that you can get from this to see, is there potential for an area? Again, I had never heard of Two Rivers. If you're investing from across the country, this just tells you, is there a potential? The investability score is off the chart because the price point in this area area, as you saw, this property is priced extremely affordable compared to the average income, the daily rate and occupancy combination. There's a great differential there. So it's a really investable area. From there, I want to get the specific numbers because again, I'm not going to use the averages to calculate because my property is probably going to be different than the averages. So then I go to Airbnb and I put in the address of the property itself, and that will bring up this red dot in the exact location. And then you can see all the other comparable Airbnbs that are active right around that property. And then you can do a deep dive into all of these comp properties. And what you're looking for are properties that are similar, and you're going to look at their calendars, look at their previous reviews, and really get a good understanding of what you can expect in that area. So a property like this, ideally, I would look for one that has a lot more reviews because then you know it's an established property. They probably have their pricing down well, but this is hosted by somebody who's been doing this for 5 years, so hopefully they understand pricing at this point. But it's an apartment very similar to what ours would probably look like, probably built around the same time. It is a 3-bedroom, 1-bath. Ours is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. But a lot of similarities here. So then I scroll down to the calendar and I want to see at their price points currently, this is July 2nd when I'm recording this, at their price points, do they have some upcoming bookings on their calendar? And it looks like they do. They have quite a few weekends coming up here that are booked. Weekday pricing might not be locked in well because they have a lot of weekdays that are vacant. So they might be a little high on weekdays, but it looks like the weekend pricing is locked in pretty well. So you can look at weekend pricing is $251 here for, the next available weekend. So you can assume that these are probably kind of right around that price point. These others that are booked, then you can look at the next season and then sort of the opposite season too, like the lowest season, and you can see what they're asking in that season. And know the price point's probably going to come down in that season, but it can give you a good idea. Then I read through every review on every single comp, and it's amazing how guests will paint a picture of exactly what they love and what they do not like about that specific location. And so you can get such a great picture of who your ideal guest is by reading through all these reviews, and they can tell you what they like about the location. If there's specific amenities the ideal guest for that area really likes, you can then replicate the things that people are raving about and get your listing ranked as high as possible. So after you do that, then I go over to my vacation rental analyzer and I plug in the numbers so I can see exactly what I can expect in terms of return on a deal like this. If it was to be purchased at almost full asking price, $119, closing costs of $3,000, after repair value of around $250,000, you can see what the taxes are, insurances, repair costs. They're allocating about $100,000. This is just a set aside or initial allocation when you're doing your analysis to just based on the pictures, based on what you think your expenses are going to be, you want to come up with a round number. This is going to get honed a lot once you do your home inspection and find out more information, but you need to be able to do a quick analysis to understand, is this workable as a deal? Then you look at the furnishing costs of $25,000, and that should be plenty for 2 units like this. Now, here's the awesome thing. On a deal like this, you can get this entire deal done for less than $12,000 out of pocket. So when you're buying a deal that's a lower cost deal with a big rehab, it's perfect for a hard money loan because the typical hard money lender, and you can Google hard money lenders, there's lots of them out there. I'll put links to some of the lenders I use in the description if you want to use some of the lenders I've had good experiences with in the past. But a typical hard money lender is going to give you 90% of what you need in terms of purchase price. And then they'll give you 100% of the rehab amount. So that means they're going to give you $107,000 to close the deal. They're going to give you another $100,000 that they'll hold back in escrow, and as you complete the rehab, they'll release those funds to you. So you have to come to the table with $11,900 to do this deal that's going to turn into this cash flow machine. Typically, the interest rate's a bit higher because it's a short-term, hard money loans are short-term loans, so it's 12% or around 12%. Typically, they charge a couple points as well. So here's what the income and expense side of things look like. So from a high season, the average is about $185 per unit based on all the comps that we looked at. And, I just looked at one in this demonstration, but you would want to look at all of them. And then in the low season, it's about $125 on average. And that's at an 80% occupancy in the high season, 35% in the low season. So really, it's just like weekends. getting booked. And so this is about what the weekend rate would be in the low season. So when you average that together, it's about $310 on average at a 58% occupancy. So this property could sit vacant for almost half the year and you're still making $70,000 of gross income. Now, it very well could do much better than this. This is very conservative numbers, but I always recommend run it in the most conservative scenario possible. Then you add in your cleaning fees, which is more revenue. It's going to be passed through to your cleaners. So that's another $10,000 and you're about $80,000 of gross. Then you can see how all the different expenses work out for a short-term rental. I, again, always err on the high side, the most conservative scenario. So you're probably not going to pay $800 a month of utilities and Wi-Fi every single month, but I'm going to err on the high side just in case. Maintenance, you're probably not going to spend $300 a month on maintenance, but something's going to break at some point. So you might as well count that as an expense and have a set aside ready for it. So I want to know that the actual net cash flow that I'm calculating is actual net cash flow, and I'm not going to have to dip into it for anything. So if that's the case, then you look at the deal calculations, and this is with that hard money loan still in place. You're making about $2,000 a month of net cash flow. But now you're going to refinance out that hard money loan, right, into a cheaper long-term financing. And so now let's look at what those numbers look like. So from a refinance standpoint, the property is now worth $250 after you rehab it. And any DSCR lender out there that's an investment property lender, you can Google DSCR lenders, or you can look out, again, I'll have links to lenders I've used in the past that are great to work with. Any DSCR lender is going to give you 75% of the appraised value on this property because it cash flows phenomenally well. It just makes a ton of sense for them. So that means they'll refinance out $187,500 and the interest rate's right around 8%. And that's a 30-year fixed rate loan. So now your new payment's $1,375, which brings your cash flow up to $2,771 every single month. That's your net profit left over after you've paid all your expenses every month on average. You know, it'll be higher in the summer, lower in the winter, but average across the year, you're sticking in your pocket $2,771 on this $200,000, just over $200,000 deal. Now, the cool thing here is, let's say you don't have $70,000 to leave in this deal, because again, the bank's only giving you $187,000, so you're going to have more than that in this deal between all your closing costs, your furnishing costs, all of that. You'd still leave in about $70,000 of cash. Now, you could go to a secondary lender, a private lender, and say, hey, if you want to make 10% or 12% on your money, would you want to be a second mortgage on this property? And you can see the numbers. You can see it cash flows really well. There's plenty of money to pay you every month. It's backed by a mortgage on this property. And you could put a secondary lender in place. So if they give you $70,000, now you have $0 in this deal. Now the payment for that $70,000 is going to be about $700 a month, which brings your net cash flow down to $2,000. So now you're making $2,000 a month without a single dime invested in this deal, and you have infinite cash on cash returns, which is just, it's like the mecca of deals. You know, when you don't have a penny into a deal and you can make several $1,000s a month on that investment into perpetuity, it's just a fantastic way to do it. Now, I mentioned at the end I was going to go through 3 different ways to de-risk your investment. And the first thing that I want to talk about is short-term rental regulations. This is a question I get all the time, is what if I buy a property and there's regulations on that property? So what I recommend is you can just go to Google and you can put in 2 Rivers short-term rental regulation, and most likely any town that you Google search, you're going to be able to find information about their short-term rental regulations, because most towns have made a rule on it. If they haven't made a rule yet, that's, in my opinion, a risky place to invest. But if they have made a rule, then you can very quickly find out what the restrictions are. It takes you to their website. There's this application for short-term rentals, and it tells you exactly what you need to get a license in this area. It looks like there's a couple different inspections. You have to have insurance. You pay $150 and you get your license. Looks like they'll even advertise you on their local website too. Your listing on their local website. So free advertising also. So you can pretty quickly find that. And if they have rules in place, then most likely they're not going to jump around. It's not like they establish a rule today and then 6 months later they, you know, ban all short-term rentals. Typically it's a undertaking to establish the rules, and then that's what the rules remain for the foreseeable future, unless there's there's some big change in that town. The second thing that I highly recommend is to figure out, does the property work from a long-term rental perspective? And this is really important because you never know. What if rules do change? Or what if there's another lockdown or something like that and people aren't traveling? What's the worst case scenario? And in most cases, the worst case scenario is you convert this to a long-term rental. And there's a lot of properties these days that people are buying that just will never work as a long-term rental. You would hemorrhage cash flow. So I want to know what the long-term rental rates are. So you can go to citydata.com and you can put in any town across the whole US, and it will tell you so much information about that area. In terms of all the data around that area, you can really intimately get to know that area. And at the bottom of the first section, it tells you what the median gross rent is. You know, these are averages, and there's going to be a lot of probably crappy rentals in that area, and yours is going to be much nicer. So you can kind of err on the high side a bit, but at least it tells you what the median is, and you can be comfortable knowing that yes, this property does still at least break even or cash flow somewhat as a long-term rental, and I'm not going to lose this property in a worst case scenario if I ever had to convert it. Then the final item that I recommend to really de-risk your short-term rental investment is to get a professional home inspection. I've done probably 200 rehabs across, you know, all the flips that I've done, all the rental properties that I've done, and I still, on every single property, I get a home inspection by a really good professional home inspector, because they are exploring every square inch of that property, and there's things that I might forget to look at or not even think of, and they're documenting it and taking pictures. So there's probably going to be a lot of things that are small items that you didn't see that are no big deal. You're still going to move forward with that deal, but they might uncover big things that either give you the chance to walk away unscathed, or they give you a chance to renegotiate the price because now you found something that you weren't expecting. So especially if you're investing from across the country, if you do these three things, you understand the short-term rental regulations, you ensure that the property in a worst case scenario works as a long-term rental, and then you get a professional home inspection, you're going to be in a really good, low risk, high cash flowing position. So hey, if you found this video helpful, I'd love to hear it in the comments below. You can also hit that like button. Also, like I said, I work with people personally to help them find deals just like the one I just walked through that are super high cash flowing, relatively low risk. So if you're interested in working with me in this program, you can set up that call with me at livingoffrentals.com/call. Thanks for joining me for this video. God bless, and I'll see you in the next video.